So I thought it'd be useful. A lot of our roles in the NHS there have entry points through an apprenticeship. So I'll do a bit of a whistle-stop tour of apprenticeships because I appreciate some of you would have heard of them before. They are effectively a mixture of hands-on experience and learning. So it's a mixture of on-the-job and off-the-job training where you'll learn a bit of theory and then you apply it within your role and develop your skills. You'll be paid at least national minimum wage for apprenticeships, and generally speaking an apprenticeship can last anywhere between 1 and 6 years depending on the level, and a lot of them either include qualifications within them, or they are a qualification in their own right. So it's an opportunity to gain an accredited qualification while learning on the job. So I like to do a little bit of myth busting with apprenticeships because lots of people have heard about apprenticeships, but not always necessarily the right information, or some of it's out of date. So myth number 1, apprenticeships are for plumbers or hairdressers. So a lot of people think of the word of an apprentice as being, someone stood in blue overalls or sweeping up hair on hairdresser floor. Now, while apprenticeships are for those careers, actually 75% of apprentices last year worked in roles that were in health and social care or business administration. So the vast majority of apprenticeships are actually in roles that are commonly found across the NHS. So again, while it's an opportunity for people to go and do something that might be considered a traditional trade, actually, vast majority of apprentices are not working in those areas. Myth number 2, apprenticeships are for people who aren't academic. So there is a bit of a myth that people who are, potentially academically sort of comfortable, they like doing sort of traditional academic subjects like GCSE and A-levels, they go on straight to university and follow an academic pathway, and apprenticeships are for people who are maybe more vocationally minded and maybe not as comfortable with that traditional route. There are actually over 90 apprenticeships in the UK that contain an academic degree now. So to say that apprenticeships aren't academic is not true anymore. And even those apprenticeships that are perhaps traditionally seen as being more vocational, they often need an academic foundation as well. So for example, if you wanted to do an electrical apprenticeship to become an electrician, most colleges won't accept you on that program unless you've got a GCSE 4 to 9 in English, maths, and at least 1 science. So even those subjects that perhaps traditionally might have been seen as more vocational still require an element of academic learning. The only real difference here is that apprenticeships are taught a little bit differently, give people an opportunity to practice the skills that they are learning and apply that learning. So myth number 3, apprentices get paid peanuts. You might have heard of sort of old-fashioned apprenticeship schemes where apprentices got paid £10 a week. It's just not true anymore. As I mentioned, the apprenticeship minimum wage exists nationally. That has just moved up to the same amount as normal minimum wage for 16, 17-year-olds at just over £4.70 an hour. And actually, a lot of NHS employers offer a competitive entry-level salary based around our existing pay bands through our trainee pay scale. So quite often you'll be able to access a really competitive salary while also getting your qualifications paid for. Myth number 4, graduates earn more than apprentices. So often people think that you have to go and do a degree to earn more money in your career. Statistically speaking, apprentices earn over £100,000 more in their career than a graduate does. So actually, although being a graduate in certain situations is a necessity, and in other situations obviously helps you with your career, doing an apprenticeship is just as helpful, if not more so, in a lot of our industries. Myth number 5, apprenticeships don't lead to jobs. So historically, you would find apprentices would do their program and then perhaps leave their employer at the end of their apprenticeship. You don't really find that as much now, although it's still often a competitive process at the end of your apprenticeship. It's absolutely pointless us training people up for anywhere between a year and 6 years if we're not aiming to keep you within our organisations to make use of those skills that you've developed. It just doesn't make sense. So there are often, if not always, opportunities at the end of your apprenticeship to go straight into a job with the employer that you did your apprenticeship with. And in fact, some employers actually offer you a permanent contract automatically at the end of your apprenticeship anyway. So definitely not a sort of a transitory thing that you will just lead at the end of your apprenticeship. And last but not least, apprentices just make the tea. So again, another common sort of image of an apprentice is, you know, someone just doing the photocopying and the filing and sweeping up and making a tea. While that might be a part of an apprentice's job, it shouldn't be any more so than anyone else's, because actually the apprenticeship is about developing you to be able to do the job at the end. If you're doing a healthcare support worker apprenticeship and all you're doing is making the tea, when you finish your apprenticeship, you won't have the experience and the skills to be able to do the job. So it's counterproductive for an employer to just make you do the jobs that no one else wants to do. So realistically, the only place an apprentice should be making the tea regularly is if they're working for Costa Coffee or Starbucks.